The October morning in Brainerd greeted residents with the first real frost. The leaves on the maple trees around Lake Gull took on bright shades of red and gold, and the air became so clear and transparent that it seemed as if you could see every detail on the opposite shore. On days like this, the small town in northern Minnesota looked especially cozy, like a postcard from a tourist brochure about the beauty of the Midwest. Frank Collins stood in the garage of his auto repair shop, Collins Motors, and admired the view through the open gate. At 54, he was still a strong man with broad shoulders and confident movements. The gray in his dark hair and the wrinkles around his eyes only added to his gravitas. 28 years ago, he had returned home after serving in the Army and opened this shop, gradually turning it into the most reliable place in the county for car repairs. "Dad, did you see where I left the keys to Miller's pickup?" His son's voice interrupted his thoughts. Jamie appeared from behind a red Chevrolet, wiping his hands on his overalls. At 26, he was a carbon copy of his father in his youth. Same dark hair, same hazel eyes, same habit of squinting when he was thinking. But his personality was softer, kinder. Frank sometimes worried that his son was too trusting for this world. "On the workbench next to the coffee mug," Frank replied without turning around. "And don't forget to tell Miller that the brake pads need to be changed in a month or two. I heard them squeaking." Jamie nodded and headed for the workbench, but stopped halfway. "Dad, do you remember that Alex and I are going to pick out flowers for the church today? She wants white roses with blue ribbons." At the mention of his fiancée, Frank's face softened. Alex Rivera had come into their lives a year ago when she moved to Brainerd to teach at the local elementary school. Jamie met her at Betty's Friendly Cafe, and it was clear from the first glance that the boy was smitten. Frank was skeptical at first. It had all happened so fast. But Alex turned out to be an amazing girl. She was beautiful, but not the kind of beauty you see in magazines. She had long brown hair, which she usually wore in a simple ponytail, large green eyes, and a slight smile. But what struck Frank most was how she treated Jamie, with such tenderness and care, as if he were the most precious person in the world. "Of course I remember," Frank said. "Your mom has reminded me about it 3 times this morning. By the way, she wants you to come home for lunch. She said she'll make your favorite soup with dumplings." Jamie smiled that special smile he always had when the conversation turned to his family or his upcoming wedding. "You know, Dad, sometimes I can't believe this is happening to me. A year ago, I thought I'd be single forever, and now in 2 weeks I'm marrying the most beautiful girl in the world." Frank turned to his son and put his heavy hand on his shoulder. "You're a good guy, Jamie. You deserve to be happy. And Alex, she's special. You can tell she really loves you." It was true. Over the past year, Frank had watched Alex take care of Jamie, support him when he was having a hard time at the workshop, and laugh at his not always funny jokes. She fit right into their family, helping Maggie cook Sunday dinners, listening to Frank's stories about the old days, participating in all the family traditions. At the same time, there was something cautious about her. It was as if she was always watching what she said, always on guard. Frank attributed this to her having grown up in a big city and not yet being completely accustomed to the measured life of a small town where everyone knows everyone else. The ringing of the phone interrupted his thoughts. Jamie picked up the receiver. "Collins Motors. Hello, oh, hi, honey. Yes, I remember the flowers. What time are we meeting? 2? Great, I'll be there." He hung up and looked at his father with a guilty smile. "That was Alex. She's worried about the flowers. She wants everything to be perfect." "I understand." Frank nodded. "A wedding only happens once in a lifetime. At least it should be," he added with a slight smile. Jamie laughed and headed for the door. "I'll go home for lunch, then meet Alex. Don't forget about dinner at the Harrisons tonight. Mom said we should be there at 7. When his son left, Frank returned to working on Mrs. Peterson's old Ford. His thoughts, however, were preoccupied with the upcoming wedding. In 2 weeks, his only son would be a husband, and it would be a new chapter in their family's life. At that moment, at Brainerd Elementary School, Alex Rivera sat at her desk in an empty classroom, reviewing the 3rd graders' homework. School had ended half an hour ago, but she often stayed late to prepare for the next day or simply enjoy the quiet. She loved her job. The children were honest and straightforward. They didn't ask difficult questions about her past, or try to dig deeper than she was willing to share. To them, she was just Miss Rivera, the kind teacher who read them interesting books and helped them with math. In Brainerd, she had found what she had been looking for her whole life: peace. No one here knew her story, no one asked uncomfortable questions. She was just Alex, Jamie Collins' fiancée, the future Mrs. Collins. The thought of her upcoming wedding filled her with both joy and anxiety. Joy because she truly loved Jamie with all her heart. He was a kind, honest, reliable man who accepted her for who she was. Anxiety because she knew there were things about her past she could never tell him. She stood up and walked over to the window overlooking the town's main street. Brainerd was exactly the kind of place she had dreamed of. Quiet, peaceful, where people said hello on the street and knew each other's children's names. Here she could be herself, the woman she had always felt she was. The phone in her purse vibrated. A message from Jamie. "Can't wait to see you, love you." Alex smiled and quickly typed a reply. "I love you too. See you soon." It was true. She loved him more than she thought she was capable of loving anyone. Jamie saw only the good in her and treated her like a treasure. When she was with him, she felt safe and accepted. But even in these happy moments, somewhere deep down, there was fear. Fear that one day the truth would come out. What would happen if someone from her past showed up in Brainerd? What would happen if the Collins family found out what she had been hiding so carefully? She pushed those thoughts away. The past was in the past. Her old documents were safely hidden away. She had changed her last name, and she had moved thousands of miles away from where she grew up. No one would ever find out. No one must find out. Alex gathered her things and headed for the door. Ahead of them lay an evening at the Harrisons' house, old friends of the Collins family who had insisted on hosting a pre-wedding dinner. One more step toward becoming part of this community, this family. The Collins house on Maple Street was typical of the Midwest. 2 stories, with a wide porch and a neat garden in front of the entrance. Maggie Collins was hanging laundry on a clothesline in the yard when she heard her husband's footsteps on the gravel driveway. At 52, Maggie retained the attractiveness and energy that had drawn Frank to her 30 years ago. Her light hair was now carefully dyed to hide the gray, and wrinkles had appeared around her blue eyes, but her smile remained the same, warm and sincere. "How's the workshop?" she asked without turning around. "Quiet. Jamie went home for lunch, just like you asked." Frank walked over to his wife and put his arm around her waist. "And then he's going with Alex to pick out flowers." Maggie leaned against her husband. "I'm so happy for them, Frank. Alex is perfect for our boy. She's caring, smart, and you can tell they love each other." "Yes," Frank agreed. "Although sometimes I feel like there's something unspoken about her, like she's hiding a part of herself." Maggie turned to him. "What do you mean?" Frank shrugged. "I don't know. Maybe it's just my imagination. She hardly ever talks about her family, about where she came from. And when she does, it's kind of cautious." "Maybe she had a difficult home life," Maggie suggested. "Not all families are as happy as ours. The main thing is that she's good to Jamie and makes him happy." Frank nodded. His wife was right. Whatever secrets Alex had in her past, what mattered was how she behaved now. And right now, she was the perfect bride for their son. That evening, the Harrison home was filled with laughter and conversation. Bob Harrison, a stocky man with a bushy mustache, worked at the local bank and was one of Frank's oldest friends. His wife, Dolores, ran a flower shop and was known throughout the town for her magnificent arrangements. 12 people gathered around the table: the Collins family, the Harrisons, Pastor Martin and his wife, and a few other close family friends. Alex sat next to Jamie, and Frank noticed how naturally she participated in the conversation, how easily she laughed at jokes, how thoughtfully she made sure everyone had food on their plates. "Alex, dear," Dolores Harrison said to her, "tell us about the flowers you chose today. I heard you decided on roses." Alex's face lit up with a smile. "Yes, white roses with blue ribbons. Jamie said blue is the color of my eyes," she said, playfully nudging her fiancé with her elbow, making him blush. "What about the bridesmaids' bouquets?" asked Mrs. Martin. For a second, Alex's expression changed, becoming more tense. "I'm not having bridesmaids." she said quietly. "I prefer a simple ceremony." There was an awkward pause. Bridesmaids were a tradition in Brainerd, and their absence seemed strange. "What about your family?" Maggie asked delicately. "Are they coming to the wedding?" Alex looked down at her plate. "Unfortunately, no. We were not very close. They live far away and have their own lives." She looked up and smiled, but Frank thought the smile seemed forced. "But I'll have a new family now, the best family anyone could wish for." Jamie took her hand. "We're your family now," he said softly. The rest of the evening passed in a warm atmosphere, but Frank couldn't forget Alex's expression when the conversation turned to her past. There was something more than just sadness about broken family ties. There was fear. Late that night, when they returned home, Frank lay awake for a long time. He lay next to Maggie, who was sleeping peacefully, and thought about the upcoming wedding, his son's happiness, his new daughter-in-law. Something was bothering him, but he couldn't figure out what it was. Alex was a beautiful girl. There was no doubt about that. She made Jamie happy, respected their family traditions, and was ready to become part of their world. But then why did he still feel like he didn't really know her? Maybe it was because she was too perfect, too careful with her words, too eager to please, too secretive about her past. People don't usually come to places like Brainerd without a good reason. What or who was Alex running from? Frank rolled over and tried to push the disturbing thoughts away. The next morning, Alex woke up in her small apartment above Schmidt's Bakery with a heavy feeling in her chest. She had slept restlessly, her mind filled with fragments of memories she preferred to keep locked away. She got up, went to the window, and looked out at Main Street in Brainerd, already bustling at 7 in the morning. Old Mr. Schmidt was unloading flour outside his bakery. Mrs. Peterson was walking her corgi, and Dave the mailman had already started his morning rounds. The ordinary, predictable life of a small town was exactly what had drawn her here a year ago. Alex went into the bathroom and looked at herself in the mirror. 24 years old, shoulder-length brown hair, green eyes, delicate features. She studied her reflection critically, as she had done every morning for the past 6 years. Everything looked right. Everything was as it should be. She opened the cabinet above the sink and took out a small box of pills, estrogen. She had been taking them every day for so many years that it had become an automatic movement. But today, her hand was shaking. Yesterday's questions about her family and her past had reminded her how fragile her new life was. Alex was born Alexander Rivera in Los Angeles. From childhood, she knew that something was wrong with her body, that she was a girl trapped in a boy's body. Her parents, a conservative Catholic family, didn't understand at first, then tried to fix her by sending her to psychologists and priests. At 16, after another attempt to force her to be normal, she ran away from home. The following years were difficult. She worked wherever she could, moved from place to place, and gradually underwent hormone therapy and surgery when she had the money. She obtained a degree by correspondence and chose to become a teacher because she loved children and wanted to give them the understanding and acceptance she herself had never received. 3 years ago, she finally changed her documents and became Alex Rivera. She saved money for 2 years to move away from California, away from the people who knew her past. Minnesota seemed like the perfect place, far away, quiet, conservative enough that no one would suspect anything unusual about a quiet teacher. She had been living in Brainerd for a year, building a relationship with Jamie and becoming part of his family. It was like a fairy tale, a kind, loving man who saw her only as a woman, an accepting family, a respectable job, everything she had ever dreamed of. But the fear wouldn't go away. What if someone found out? What if someone from her past showed up? What if Jamie and his family turned their backs on her? The phone rang, interrupting her dark thoughts. Jamie's name lit up the screen. "Good morning, beautiful." His voice sounded cheerful and carefree. "How did you sleep?" "Fine," Alex lied, trying to sound cheerful. "What are your plans for today?" "My dad wants me to help him with inventory in his workshop. Then I was thinking of stopping by after work. Maybe we could go to Betty's for dinner." "Sure, I'll be waiting." After the conversation, Alex felt a little better. Jamie always had a calming effect on her. When he was around, she forgot her fears and doubts. The day at school began as usual. Alex was teaching reading to the third graders when the principal, Mrs. Anderson, an elderly woman with gray hair and a stern but kind face, popped into the classroom. "Miss Rivera, do you have a minute?" Alex left the children with their assignment and went out into the hallway. "I wanted to talk to you about the upcoming wedding," Mrs. Anderson said. "I know you asked for time off for your honeymoon, but I wanted to discuss a replacement." They talked about work matters, but Alex noticed that the principal was studying her more closely than usual. "Miss Rivera," Mrs. Anderson said after a pause, "I wanted to ask you yesterday. I got a call from a woman who was interested in you. She said she worked for an employment agency and was checking references, but there was something strange about her voice. Are you expecting any calls about a job?" Alex's heart skipped a beat. "No, I haven't applied for any jobs." "What exactly did she ask?" "About your education, previous places of employment. I told her I couldn't give her any information without your written consent, but to be honest, I got the impression she wasn't really looking for what she said she was." Alex tried to remain calm. Maybe it was a mistake. Maybe they were looking for a different Alex Rivera. The principal nodded, but a shadow of doubt remained in her eyes. "Of course, but if anything is bothering you, know that you can come to me." Alex spent the rest of the day on edge. Who could be calling and asking about her past? Could someone from Los Angeles have found her? Or was it just a coincidence? After class, she locked herself in her classroom and took out her phone. She quickly dialed the number in California, the only contact she had from her past life. "Hi, it's me," she said when the phone was answered. "Alex? My goodness, it's been so long." Maria's voice, her friend from the transgender support group in Los Angeles, sounded surprised. "How are you? How's your new life?" "Maria, I need to ask you something. Has anyone been looking for me? Has anyone been trying to find out where I live?" There was a pause on the other end of the line. "What happened?" "Maybe nothing. But today a woman called my work and asked questions about me. I'm worried." "Alex, you know we have strict confidentiality. No outsiders can get any information. But..." Maria fell silent. "But what?" "A month ago, a man came here. He asked about you at your old addresses. He said he was a private investigator and that your family wanted to find you, but no one told him anything." Alex's blood ran cold. "Family? What family?" "I don't know. He didn't give any names. He just said he was looking for Alexandra Rivera at the request of her relatives." After the conversation, Alex sat in the empty classroom for a long time, trying to calm down. A private investigator. Who could have hired him and why? Her parents. But they had disowned her years ago. Other relatives? She wasn't in touch with anyone in her family. What if it wasn't about the past, but the present? What if someone in Brainerd had become suspicious and decided to check her background? At 6 o'clock in the evening, Jamie knocked on her apartment door. Alex opened it, trying to look natural. "Hi, honey. You look tired." He kissed her on the cheek. "Hard day?" "A little." The kids were especially active today. They went to Betty's Cafe, a small, cozy place in the center of town where the locals gathered. Betty Olson, a plump, middle-aged woman with a kind face, greeted them with a smile. "Well, newlyweds, how are the wedding preparations going?" "Everything's going according to plan," Jamie replied. "Right, Alex?" Alex nodded, but noticed that several cafe patrons were looking at her with interest. In a small town, everyone knew everyone else, and the upcoming wedding was a big event for the whole community. They sat down at their usual table by the window. Jamie ordered a steak, Alex a salad. She couldn't eat because she was so nervous. "Alex, are you okay?" Jamie asked, covering her hand with his. "You seem distracted." She looked into his honest brown eyes and thought once again what a good man he was. Jamie deserved the truth, but the truth could destroy everything. "I'm just nervous about the wedding," she said. "That's normal, right?" "Of course it's normal. I'm nervous too. But you know what calms me down? The fact that we'll be together. No matter what happens, we'll get through it because we love each other." His words should have calmed her down, but instead they made her even more anxious. What if he found out the truth? Would he still be able to say he loved her? "Jamie," she began cautiously, What if you find out something about me that you don't like? Something from my past?" He frowned. "What are you talking about? Everyone has a past. What matters is who we are now." But what if it's something serious? Jamie looked at her for a long time. Alex, have you ever killed anyone? Robbed a bank? She laughed, despite her anxiety. No, of course not. Then we can get through anything. I don't love you for your past. I love you for who you are. They finished dinner in a more relaxed atmosphere, but Alex couldn't shake her uneasiness. On the way home, they ran into Frank, who was returning from his workshop. Hi, Dad, Jamie greeted him. How did the inventory go? Fine. Found out we're running low on oil filters. Frank turned to Alex. How's school? I heard the kids are getting ready for Halloween. Yes, we're making costumes for the school party, Alex replied. Frank nodded, but she noticed that he was studying her face more closely than usual. Maybe it was just her imagination, but there was something wary in his gaze. By the way, Alex, he said, my wife wanted to ask you about your honeymoon. Where are you planning to go? We haven't decided yet, she replied. Maybe Duluth, to see Lake Superior. Good choice. Beautiful place. Maggie and I went there when we were young. He paused. And your family, are they definitely not coming to the wedding? The question sounded natural, but Alex sensed that it was more than just polite interest. Unfortunately, no. We have a complicated relationship. I understand. It happens in families. Frank nodded. Well, the main thing is that you'll have a new family now. When they parted, Alex couldn't shake the feeling that Frank suspected something. Or was it paranoia caused by the detective's call and Maria's message? At home, she couldn't fall asleep for a long time. She lay in bed thinking about how fragile her happiness was. One phone call, one meeting with someone from her past, and everything would collapse. Jamie, her family, her job, her reputation in the city, everything would disappear in an instant. She got up and went to the closet, where a small box stood in the far corner. Inside were documents from her past life, a birth certificate in the name of Alexander River, old photographs, hospital records. She had been meaning to destroy them for a long time, but couldn't bring herself to do it. They were her only connection to the person she used to be. Alex took the box and went into the kitchen. She lit a candle and began burning the documents one by one, watching as the flames turned her past to ash. Maybe if she destroyed all the evidence, the past would stop haunting her. Dawn was breaking outside. There were less than 2 weeks left before the wedding, 14 days to keep her secret, 14 days to make sure no one found out the truth. On Monday morning, 10 days before the wedding, Alex's life began to fall apart. She was making breakfast when she heard a knock at the door. Through the peephole, she saw a middle-aged man in a dark suit. Her heart began to race. Something about him seemed familiar and threatening. Alex Rivera? He asked when she opened the door on the chain. Yes. My name is David Stone. I'm a private investigator. He showed her his ID. Can we talk? Alex felt the ground slip away beneath her feet, but she tried to remain calm. About what? About your past. About Alexandra Rivera. The pause seemed like an eternity. Alex knew this moment would come someday, but she still wasn't ready. I don't know what you're talking about. Stone smiled coldly. Miss Rivera, I've been working on this case for 2 months. I have documents, witnesses, photographs. We can discuss this here, in the doorway, where the neighbors can hear us, or we can talk in private. Alex took off the chain and let him in. Stone walked into the living room and looked around. A small apartment, modestly furnished but cozy. There were photos of Jamie on the shelf and wedding invitations on the table. A beautiful life, he said. Too bad it's built on lies. Who hired you? Alex asked, trying to keep her voice from trembling. That's confidential information, but I can tell you that it's someone who is very interested in getting the truth out. Stone took a folder out of his briefcase and placed it on the table. Alexander Rivera, born in Los Angeles in 2001, ran away from home at 16. According to records, he underwent hormone therapy and sex reassignment surgery. Officially changed his name and gender 3 years ago. He looked at her. Want to see the photos? Alex closed her eyes. The game was over. What do you want? Nothing special. I just want people to know the truth about who the local boy is marrying. How much? Stone frowned. Excuse me? How much money do you want to keep quiet? Miss Rivera, I'm not a blackmailer. I'm a detective doing a job. My client wants this information made public, and it will be. Alex sank into a chair. It was over. The wedding, Jamie, her life in Brainerd, it would all come crashing down in a matter of hours. When? She asked quietly. Today. My client has already contacted the locals. By evening, the whole town will know. Stone gathered his papers and headed for the door. By the way, he said, turning back, your fiancé seems like a nice guy. It's a shame he'll have to find out this way. When the door closed behind him, Alex collapsed onto the sofa and burst into tears. All her fears had come true. Someone had found her. Someone wanted to destroy her life. But who? And why? She tried to collect her thoughts. She had to warn Jamie, tell him the truth before he found out from someone else. Maybe if she explained everything herself, he would understand, forgive her, accept her. But deep down, she knew that was impossible. Jamie had grown up in a conservative family in a small town where traditional values were sacred. How would he react to the fact that his fiancée used to be a man? The phone rang. Jamie's name lit up on the screen. Hi, honey, how are you? Alex couldn't speak through her tears. Alex, what's wrong? Jamie, I need to talk to you. It's very important. Is it something serious? Yes. Can you come over? Of course. I'll be there in 10 minutes. Those 10 minutes felt like an eternity. Alex paced around the apartment, trying to find the words to explain the inexplicable. How do you tell the person you love that you've been deceiving them from the very beginning? How do you explain that you're not who you said you were? Jamie arrived excited, flowers in his hands. Alex, what happened? You scared me. She looked at his kind, honest face and realized she couldn't do it. She couldn't destroy his world, couldn't see the love in his eyes turn to disgust. Jamie, I have a secret, something I've never told you. He sat down next to her on the sofa. What secret? About my past, about who I used to be. At that moment, Jamie's phone rang. He looked at the screen. It was his father. Dad? What's wrong? I'm at Alex's. We're what? When? Okay, we'll be right there. He hung up and looked at Alex with confusion. That's strange. Dad said we need to come home right away. He said some man came by and told him something about you. Alex felt her heart sink. It was too late. Stone was already at Frank's. Jamie, let's go, he said, taking her by the hand. We'll figure it out when we get there. The drive to the Collins house took 5 minutes, but it felt like an hour. Alex could see that Jamie was nervous, glancing at her every few seconds. What had Stone told his father? How much detail had he gone into? The house on Maple Street looked the same as always. A neat lawn, autumn flowers in the flower beds, an American flag at the entrance. But something in the atmosphere had changed. Maggie met them at the door, her eyes red from crying. Jamie, dear, she began, looking at Alex with an expression she had never seen before. It was a mixture of pity, shock, and disgust. Frank was sitting in the living room with papers in his hands. When they entered, he slowly raised his head. His face was pale and his eyes were full of rage. Sit down, son, he said quietly. Jamie sat down, still holding Alex's hand. She remained standing, feeling like she was on trial. Dad, what's going on? Frank held up a photograph, an old picture of Alex before his transition. It showed a teenager with short hair and masculine features, but the eyes were the same, green and expressive. Is that you? Frank asked, looking at Alex. Jamie looked at the photograph, then at his fiancée, then back at the photograph. The confusion in his eyes gave way to understanding, then shock. I don't understand, he whispered. Jamie, Alex began, I wanted to tell you. Tell me what? Frank's voice sounded like a whip crack. That you're a man? That you've been lying to my son for a year? I'm not a man, Alex said, trying to maintain her dignity. I'm a woman. I've always been a woman at heart. Frank stood up abruptly. At heart? At heart? You were born a man. You have male chromosomes, male biology. No amount of surgery can change that. Frank, please, Maggie tried to intervene. No, he shouted. This man deceived our son. He was going to marry him without telling him the truth. Jamie sat silently, staring at the photo. Alex could see him trying to process what he had heard. "Jamie," she said quietly, "I'm the same woman you fell in love with. Nothing has changed." He looked up at her. "Nothing has changed? You've been lying to me all this time. About your past, about your family, about who you are." "I didn't lie about my feelings. I love you." "You love him?" Frank took a step toward her. "If you loved him, you would have told me the truth from the beginning. You used him." "That's not true." "Dad, stop," Jamie said quietly. He stood up and walked over to the window, turning his back to the room. "I need time to think." "Think about what?" Frank was furious. "The wedding is off. I won't let this deception continue." "I'm not a fraud," Alex said, feeling anger boiling up inside her too. "I'm a woman who fought for the right to be herself, who went through hell to become who she was meant to be from birth." "You're a sick person," Frank said with disgust, "and I won't let you drag my son into your sickness." "Frank!" Maggie tried to stop him, but it was too late. Alex felt something break inside her. All the years of struggle, all the effort to be accepted, all her hopes for a normal life, all of it collapsed with a few words from this man. "Sick?" she repeated. "A sick person is someone who can't accept the truth that the world is more complicated than they think it is. A sick person is someone who chooses to hate rather than understand." Frank took a step toward her, his face contorted with rage. "Get out of my house and stay away from my son." "Dad," Jamie turned away from the window. "Don't." "No, Jamie. This man has lied to you from the beginning. God knows what else he's capable of." Alex looked at Jamie, searching his eyes for even a hint of understanding, but all she saw was confusion and pain. "Jamie," she said, "say something." He was silent for a long time, then said quietly, "I need time." Those words hurt more than any of Frank's insults. Alex realized she had lost him. Maybe not forever, but right now, she had lost him. She headed for the door, but Frank blocked her way. "I want you to leave town," he said quietly but menacingly. "Today. Or what? Or I'll make you regret ever coming to Brainerd." Alex looked at him. At this man she had considered almost a father a year ago. There was such hatred in his eyes that she was afraid. "I haven't hurt anyone," she said. "You hurt my son, and you'll pay for that." She left the house, feeling the eyes of her neighbors on her. News traveled fast in a small town, and she was sure that by evening, everyone in Brainerd would know the whole story. At home, Alex gathered her things. She didn't have much: clothes, books, a few photos of Jamie that now caused her pain. She left her engagement ring on the table with a note. "I'm sorry. I really loved you." By evening, she was on the road, leaving Brainerd forever. In the rearview mirror, she caught a glimpse of the church where their wedding was to take place in 9 days. But Alex didn't know that Frank Collins wasn't done with her yet. His heart burned with a rage that demanded not just her expulsion, but punishment. And he knew where to find her. Because Private Investigator Stone had told him not only about Alex's past, but also where she was likely to go. Fear has big eyes, but hatred has a long memory. Alex was driving along Interstate 94 toward Minneapolis when she realized she couldn't go on. Tears blurred her vision, her hands were shaking, and she could barely hold the steering wheel. She pulled into a gas station near a small lake and turned off the engine. It was around 9 o'clock in the evening. The lake reflected the last rays of the setting sun, and the place seemed peaceful, almost idyllic. It was the complete opposite of the storm raging inside her. Alex took out her phone and looked at the screen. 7 missed calls from Jamie. She didn't know what he wanted to say, and she was afraid to find out. Maybe he was calling to say goodbye, or to tell her everything he thought about her. She dialed Maria's number in Los Angeles. "Alex? My God, how are you? You sound terrible." "Maria, it's over. They found me. The detective told my fiancé and his family everything." There was a pause on the other end. "Oh no, Alex, I'm so sorry. What are you going to do?" "I don't know. I left town, but I don't know where to go next. Come back to Los Angeles. You have friends and support here. We'll help you start over." Alex closed her eyes. Go back to where she ran from? To the past she was trying to forget? "I'll think about it," she said. "Maria, do Do you have any idea who might have hired a detective? Who would want to ruin my life? I have no idea. Maybe your family decided to find you after all? After all these years? I doubt it. They talked for a few more minutes, then Alex hung up. She sat in her car by the dark lake, trying to decide what to do next. A hotel for the night. And tomorrow, what tomorrow? Just then, her phone rang. Jamie. Alex stared at the screen for a long time, then answered. "Hi," she said quietly. "Alex, where are you?" Jamie's voice sounded tense. "I left, like you wanted. I didn't want you to leave. Your father wanted me to." Pause. "Alex, I don't know what to say. This is all so unexpected. I need time to figure things out." "I understand. But I don't want you to disappear completely. Can we meet? Talk?" Alex felt a glimmer of hope. "Are you sure?" "Yes. Where are you now?" She looked at the sign. "At Cormorant Lake, at the gas station near exit 178. I know that place. I'll be there in an hour." After Jamie hung up, Alex felt like she could breathe for the first time all day. Maybe all was not lost. Maybe if she explained everything to him calmly, he would understand. She bought a coffee at the gas station and sat down on a bench by the water to wait. Time dragged on slowly. Alex rehearsed the words she would say to Jamie. How could she explain to him that she hadn't meant to deceive him, that she just wanted to be happy? Exactly an hour later, a familiar pickup truck pulled into the parking lot. Alex stood up, her heart beating faster. Jamie got out of the car and slowly walked toward her. In the light of the street lamps, she saw that his face was pale and his eyes were red from crying or exhaustion. "Hi," he said. "Hi." They stood facing each other, not knowing how to start the conversation. "Sit down," Alex suggested, pointing to the bench. Jamie sat down, leaving a space between them. He had always sat next to her before, taking her hand. Now he kept his distance, as if afraid to touch her. "Jamie, I want you to know that I never wanted to hurt you." He nodded, without looking at her. "Why didn't you tell me from the beginning?" "Because I was afraid. I was afraid you wouldn't understand, that you would turn away from me." "And you decided you had the right to choose for me? You decided it was better to lie?" There was no anger in his voice, only exhaustion and pain. "It wasn't a lie in the way you think. I am a woman, Jamie. I was just born in the wrong body." Jamie turned to her. "Alex, I'm trying to understand, I really am. But this changes everything." "It doesn't change anything. I'm the same woman you fell in love with." "But you hid such an important part of yourself. How can I trust you now?" Alex felt the hope slip away again. "I understand that you need time, but please don't make a decision now while you're in shock. Give yourself time to think, to figure things out." Jamie stood up and walked over to the water. "You know what the worst part is? It's not that you were a man. It's that you didn't trust me. We were together for a whole year, planning our wedding, our future, and you kept it from me the whole time. I was afraid of losing you. And in the end, you lost me because of your silence." The words hung in the air. Alex realized that he had already made up his mind. "So it's over?" Jamie was silent for a long time. "I don't know. I need time to think about everything. A lot of time." At that moment, another car pulled into the parking lot. Alex turned around and felt the blood drain from her veins. It was Frank Collins's old Ford. "Damn it," Jamie cursed. "I told him I was coming alone." Frank got out of the car and headed toward them. Even in the darkness, it was clear that he was furious. "Jamie, get in the car. We're going home." "Dad, I'm a grown man. I can decide who I want to date. Not that pervert." "Don't call her that." Jamie stepped between his father and Alex. "Him," Frank corrected. "He's a man, son, and I won't let him keep lying to you." Alex stood up. "Mr. Collins, I understand that you're upset, but—" "Shut up!" Frank barked. "Don't you dare talk to me! You disgraced my family! You deceived my son!" "Dad, calm down!" Jamie tried to intervene, but Frank wouldn't listen. He moved closer to Alex, his face contorted with rage. "I warned you to stay away from my son, but you didn't listen. I have a right." "You have no right!" Frank shouted. "You're a sick pervert who deceives normal people!" Stop it! Jamie tried to stand between them, but Frank pushed his son away. Alex saw something terrible in his eyes, not just anger, but hatred that clouded his mind. You know what the detective told me? Frank said, approaching her. That there are a lot of people like you. That you deliberately seek out normal men to drag them into your sick lives. That's not true. It is, and I won't let you ruin my son's life. Frank reached into his jacket's inside pocket and pulled out a gun. It was an old army Colt he had kept at home for 30 years. Dad, no! Jamie shouted. Alex stepped back, raising her hands. Mr. Collins, please put the gun down. We can talk. There's nothing to talk about, Frank said coldly. You deceived my son. You disgraced my family. And now you're going to pay for it. Dad, stop! What are you doing? Frank didn't answer. His whole world had narrowed to a single point. The man who he believed had destroyed his family. The detective's words echoed in his head. There are many like him. They seek out their victims. Frank was sure he was protecting not only his son, but other innocent people as well. The first shot rang out over the lake, breaking the evening silence. Alex fell, clutching her shoulder. No! Jamie rushed toward her, but his father pushed him away again. Stay back, son! This has to be done! The second shot rang out. Then the third. Frank fired methodically, as he had been taught in the army. Alex tried to crawl away, but he followed her, continuing to shoot. Jamie screamed, trying to stop his father, but he didn't seem to hear him. There was only one thought in his mind. Remove the threat, protect his family, restore justice. The fourth shot rang out. The fifth. Alex wasn't moving anymore, but Frank kept shooting. The sixth, the seventh, the eighth. Dad, stop! She's dead! The ninth shot rang out. The 10th, the 11th. Frank emptied the entire magazine, 15 rounds. When the last shot rang out, a deafening silence hung over the lake. Jamie knelt next to Alex's body, his hands covered in blood. He looked at his father with horror and incomprehension. What have you done? He whispered. Frank lowered the gun. His rage slowly receded, and he began to understand what had happened. I was protecting you, he said uncertainly. Protecting? You killed her. You killed the woman I loved. He was cheating on you. She was a woman, and I loved her. Jamie hugged Alex's lifeless body to himself and cried. Frank stood nearby, holding the still warm gun in his hands, gradually realizing the magnitude of what he had done. He wanted to protect his son from deception, from shame, from a sick man. But instead, he killed the woman Jamie loved. He killed her in front of his son. Sirens could be heard in the distance. Someone at the gas station had heard the shots and called the police. Frank looked at the gun in his hands, then at his son, who was rocking Alex's body and crying. Only now did he understand what he had done. Rage and prejudice had clouded his mind, and he had committed an irreparable act. Jamie, he said quietly. Son. Don't call me son, Jamie replied without looking up. I don't have a father anymore. The police cars pulled up to the lake at exactly 10:30 in the evening. They found Frank Collins sitting on a bench with a gun in his hands, his son Jamie holding the body of the murdered woman, and 15 shell casings scattered on the grass. Detective Sarah Thompson, who arrived at the scene, had worked in big cities for many years, but she hadn't seen such brutality in a long time. 15 shots fired at an unarmed woman. This wasn't a crime of passion, it was an execution. Frank did not resist arrest. He silently held out his hands for the handcuffs and allowed himself to be led to the car. The last thing he saw was his son's gaze, full of hatred and disgust. Jamie couldn't let go of Alex's body for a long time. Paramedics carefully pulled him aside, and forensic experts began their work. The lake, which had seemed so peaceful an hour ago, had turned into a crime scene. By midnight, it was all over. The body had been taken to the morgue, evidence had been collected, and witnesses had been interviewed. Frank Collins was taken into custody on charges of first-degree murder. Jamie Collins was left alone, trying to understand how his life had turned into a nightmare in one evening. The woman he loved was dead. The father he respected was a murderer, and all because of a secret that was never meant to kill anyone. 3 months later, the Crow Wing County courtroom was packed. The case of the state of Minnesota v. Frank Collins had captured the attention of the entire country. The media called it a transphobic murder case. Civil rights organizations demanded the maximum punishment, and conservative groups tried to justify Frank's actions as defending traditional values. Detective Sarah Thompson sat in the front row, watching the defendant. Frank Collins had aged 10 years in those months. His gray hair had thinned, his eyes had dimmed, and his once proud posture had collapsed under the weight of his actions. He did not admit to first-degree murder, but his lawyer tried to prove that it was a crime of passion. The defendant was acting under the influence of severe emotional distress, said the defense attorney. When he learned that his son had been deceived, he was unable to control his actions. The prosecutor, a young woman named Emily Chen, ruthlessly dismantled this version of events. Frank Collins fired 15 shots at an unarmed woman. This was not a spontaneous act of rage. He methodically emptied his entire magazine, continuing to fire even after the victim had fallen. This was a cold-blooded, hate-fueled murder. Thompson recalled the months of investigation. She studied Alex Rivera's entire history, from her childhood in Los Angeles to her final days in Brainerd. A woman who simply wanted to live a quiet life, teach children, and love a man who accepted her for who she was. Alex Rivera was a teacher who was loved by her students and colleagues, testified school principal Mrs. Anderson. She was a kind, caring person. What happened to her is a tragedy. But the hardest testimony for everyone was that of Jamie Collins. He had aged in those months, and his eyes were filled with a sadness that seemed like it would never go away. "Tell the court about your relationship with Alex Rivera," the prosecutor asked. Jamie sat up straight, but his hands were shaking. "I loved her. We were going to get married. She was the best thing that ever happened to me." "How did you react when you found out about her past?" "At first I was in shock. I didn't understand why she hadn't told me sooner. I needed time to think about it." "But you didn't reject her?" Jamie shook his head. "No. I loved her for who she was, not for who she was born. If we'd had time to talk calmly." His voice broke, but there was no time. My father decided for all of us. When the prosecutor asked him to describe the night of the murder, Jamie closed his eyes. "He just started shooting. I screamed, tried to stop him, but he wouldn't listen. He kept shooting even after she wasn't moving anymore." "What did you feel at that moment?" "Horror, disgust. I couldn't believe my father was capable of such a thing." The defense attorney tried to portray Jamie as a victim of deception. "Didn't it make you angry that Alex hid the truth from you?" "Of course it did, but that's no reason to kill someone. No one deserves to die for hiding their past." "But it was serious deception. She didn't deceive me about who she was," Jamie said firmly. "She was a woman who was afraid of rejection, and, as it turned out, she was right to be afraid." Silence fell over the courtroom. Detective Thompson also testified, describing the crime scene and the evidence. 15 shell casings were scattered within a 10-meter radius, she said. The defendant continued to shoot while moving after the victim. This indicates premeditation and cruelty. What can you say about the defendant's mental state at the time of his arrest? He was calm, almost indifferent. He showed no remorse or shock. When I asked him why he did it, he replied, "I was protecting my family from a pervert." Frank himself also testified. He looked broken, but was still trying to justify his actions. "I found out that this man was deceiving my son, that he was a man pretending to be a woman. I couldn't let that happen." "So you admit that you killed Alex Rivera?" "I was protecting my family." "Answer the question, Mr. Collins. Did you kill Alex Rivera?" A long pause. "Yes." The prosecutor did not miss the opportunity to reveal the true motives for the murder. "Mr. Collins, you did not kill Alex Rivera because she was cheating on your son. You killed her because you hated transgender people. Is that correct?" "I don't hate." "Then why 15 shots? Why did you keep shooting when she was already on the ground?" Frank was silent. "Because in your eyes, she wasn't a human being. She was a monster that had to be destroyed." Other details emerged during the trial. It wasn't Alex's relative who hired private investigator Stone, but Frank himself. Growing suspicions led him to hire a detective to check his daughter-in-law's past. "I wanted to protect my son," Frank explained. "I felt like she was hiding something." "And when you found out the truth, you decided to kill her?" "I didn't plan it. It happened spontaneously. But you took a loaded gun with you when you went to the lake. I always carry it for protection." "For protection from whom? An unarmed woman?" The trial lasted 2 weeks. The residents of Brainerd were divided in their opinions. Some considered Frank a victim of circumstances who had been pushed to the brink. Others saw him as a cold-blooded killer who couldn't accept the reality of the modern world. Maggie Collins had a hard time getting through the trial. She lost her husband, who was in prison, and practically lost her son, who blamed her for not stopping Frank. "I didn't know he was capable of that," she cried in an interview with reporters. "Frank was always a good man. I don't understand what happened to him." After the murder, Jamie closed his auto repair shop and moved to Minneapolis. He got a job as a mechanic at a large garage and tried not to think about the past. But at night, he was tormented by nightmares. He saw his father killing the woman he loved over and over again. "I can't forgive him," he said in an interview with a local newspaper. "Maybe someday I'll be able to understand his motives. But forgive him, no. He didn't just kill Alex. He killed my belief in good." On the last day of the trial, Prosecutor Chen took the stand. Alex Rivera was a woman who had come a long and difficult way to become herself. She never hurt anyone. She just wanted to be loved and accepted. For that, she was killed. 15 shots for daring to be herself. She turned to the jury. Frank Collins did not protect his family. He protected his prejudices. He killed an innocent woman out of fear and hatred for what he did not understand. Justice demands that he take full responsibility for his choices. In his closing statement, the defense attorney tried to elicit sympathy for Frank. "My client is not a monster. He is a father who wanted to protect his son. Yes, he made a mistake. Yes, his actions were wrong. But he acted out of love, albeit blinded by fear." The jury deliberated for 4 hours. When they returned, there was a tense silence in the courtroom. "On the charge of first-degree murder, we find the defendant guilty." Frank didn't flinch when he heard the verdict. He knew he was facing life in prison. As the judge handed down the sentence, he said to him, "Mr. Collins, your actions took the life of a young woman who did nothing wrong. You were guided by prejudice and hatred, not justice. I sentence you to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole." After the sentence was announced, Frank asked to speak. "I want to apologize to Alex Rivera's family and to my son. I thought I was doing the right thing, but I was wrong. I took the life of a person who did not deserve to die." These were the first words of remorse he had uttered in months. After the trial, Detective Thompson met with Jamie outside the courthouse. "How do you feel?" she asked. "I don't know. Justice has been served, but that won't bring Alex back." "What's next?" Jamie looked up at the gray sky over Brainerd. "I'll live. I'll try to build a new life. Alex would want that." He paused. "You know what's the worst part? I realize there are a lot of people like my father. People who are willing to kill because something doesn't fit into their idea of what's normal. But there are people like you, people who are capable of love despite their differences. I hope there are more of them." A year after the murder, a small memorial to Alex Rivera was unveiled in a park by the lake in Brainerd. The plaque read, "In memory of Alex Rivera, teacher and woman who dreamed of acceptance and love." Jamie visited every year on the anniversary of her death. He brought white roses, the same ones she wanted for her wedding. Frank Collins is serving a life sentence in a maximum security prison in Stillwater. He rarely receives visitors. Maggie visited him for the first 2 years, but then stopped. Jamie never visited once. In the prison library, Frank reads books about transgender people, trying to understand what he didn't understand before. It's too late for Alex, but maybe it's not too late for his own soul. Alex Rivera's story has become a symbol of the fight for transgender rights. Her death helped Minnesota pass a hate crime law that now protects people regardless of their gender identity. But for those who knew her personally, she will remain simply Alex, a kind woman who taught children, loved a man, and dreamed of simple human happiness. She dreamed and was unable to achieve it because of the fear and hatred of others. In the small town of Brainerd, where everyone knows everyone, people still talk about this story. Some with sympathy, others with condemnation. But everyone remembers the lesson that Alex Rivera's tragedy taught them. Hatred kills not only those who are hated, but also the souls of those who hate. And that sometimes the most terrifying monsters do not live in dark alleys, but in our own prejudices.